semuanya teman-teman yang udah standby di YouTube-nya GDG Jakarta dan GDG Indonesia juga. Pada malam hari ini kebetulan GDG Cloud Jakarta berkesempatan untuk kolaborasi dengan DKatalis. Mungkin kita panggilin dulu ya perwakilan dari DKatalisnya, Mbak Zaza.
Halo, sorry sebelumnya aku lagi nggak di rumah. Hopefully suaranya clear enough untuk teman-teman dengar.
Oke, ya, clear enough Mbak. Jadi pada malam hari ini kita akan kedatangan pembicara yang keren banget ya Mbak dari pihak DKatalis. Kira-kira kita malam ini bakal bahas apa ya Mbak? Maksudnya di judul YouTube-nya mungkin udah jelas juga tentang apa yang akan kita bahas. Mungkin dari Mbak Zaza mungkin sebelum kita deep, kita gali-gali sedikit dulu tentang materinya.
Boleh. Ya, jadi malam ini kita akan ngomongin tentang SRI. Dan di sini kita udah kedatangan 2 SRI dari DKatalis dan kita pengen ngejelasin dan explore sih Kak, lebih lanjut tentang site reliability engineering itu kayak gimana.
Oke, menarik banget. Tapi sebelum itu mungkin kita perkenalan dulu ya, kali mungkin beberapa penonton yang malam ini hadir belum benar tahu DKatalis itu apa sih gitu. Mungkin kita bisa brief dulu perkenalan tentang DKatalis kali ya Mbak ya. Oke, sebentar kita naikin. Oke, jadi sebelum kita mulai acaranya mungkin kita bisa perkenalan dulu. Itu banyak orang-orang udah mulai komen itu, ayo mana nih jam 7 gitu. Mungkin pada nggak sabar untuk nunggu materinya. Jadi sambil langsung kita play dulu aja perkenalan tentang apa sih sebenarnya DKatalis.
Behind every comfort food, there's a loving grandma. Behind every victory, there are endless practices. Behind every innovation, there's a strong integration. And behind every solution, there's a problem solver. Someone who stays up all night, who enjoys learning new things, who fights for their ideology. Someone who we call a catalyst. Wait, what is a catalyst? A catalyst sees problems, tinkers with them, and breaks them apart. They listen to the users, discusses with the other stakeholders, argues with each other simply because they know a problem well stated is a problem half solved. A catalyst tries out new things, exciting things, confusing things, things they've never done before. Anything, as long as it helps them solve the problems. A catalyst will try fast, test fast, fail fast, pivot, and pivot again. A solution in a catalyst's mind never stays stagnant. It evolves with the needs, with the creators, and it evolves with a purpose. This is the process behind all solutions we're building at DKatalis. Behind every attempt to solve financial literacy, empower women entrepreneurs, and simplify work experiences. Be the solver behind an impactful solution. Be a catalyst.
Iya, gila, keren banget video company profile-nya dari DKatalis ini. Oke, sebelum kita lanjut nih Mbak, mungkin sambil nunggu pesertanya yang penonton mau join ke live kita, berarti kita akan spill dulu nih Mbak sedikit, kayak pembicara kita malam ini tuh datang dari mana, terus dia ada tanggung jawab apa nih di development DKatalis sejauh ini?
Development DKatalis sebagai company gitu maksudnya ya? Apa gimana Kak?
Mungkin ya.
Oke, jadi
hari segala macam.
Oke. Singkatnya sih DKatalis itu adalah tech arm dari Jago App dan juga beberapa solusi digital lainnya, mulai dari PX, HR Management, dan juga Aman, that powers women entrepreneur. Jadi kayak financial solutions lah, banyak kayak gitu. Dan DKatalis ini tersebar di 3 negara, ada di India, kemudian Singapura, dan juga di Jakarta gitu. Saat ini kita punya 400 lebih talents yang end to end gitu, dari engineering sampai design.
Oke, terus kan kebetulan malam ini dari topik utama kita mau bahas SRI nih Mbak gitu. Nah, mungkin agar supaya lebih langsung jelas, kita mungkin bisa perkenalan sedikit nih speakers kita malam hari ini, mungkin brief introduction dari Mbak Zaza dulu sebelum kita panggilin ke stage.
Boleh. Jadi speakers kita hari ini ada 2 nih. Yang pertama itu adalah Khang, dia sebagai Head SRI dari DKatalis. dan Mas Gilang Pambudi, SRI dari DKatalis. Mereka berdua ini sama-sama handle produknya Jago, jadi akan banyak ngebahas produknya di situ.
Oke, ini penonton udah mulai masuk nih Mbak, udah semakin banyak. Jadi mungkin langsung kita panggil aja kali ya dari
Yes.
Mas Gilang dan Khang ke stage barengan gitu.
Boleh. Welcome Khang and
Halo.
Mas Gilang.
Hello.
Yeah. Maybe we can have a small chit-chat discussion first before we give the stage to you. So,
Sure.
you're in Singapore right now.
Yes, I'm based in Singapore,
I see.
and
So yeah,
Gilang is based in Jakarta. I guess it's based in Indonesia. And where are you staying? Your city, Jogja, right?
Yeah, it's Jakarta.
okay. So, I will explain first to the audience. Ya, jadi nanti sesi kita mungkin dari Kang akan menggunakan bahasa Inggris, tapi di sini kita ada Mas Gilang juga yang akan piring dengan Kang barengan. Jadi nanti ketika ada teman-teman ingin pertanyaan atau apa, bisa tulis di kolom chat aja. Nanti kita bisa bantu translatein biar dijawab sama Kangnya secara langsung gitu. Mungkin kita langsung kasih stage aja kali ya Mbak Zaza. Atau ada sepatah kata sebelum kita serahkan ke Kang overall ini stage.
Aman sih dari aku. Please Kang and Mas Gilang to the stage.
Okay,
thank you.
Yours.
All right. So yeah, thanks for GDG for inviting us, me and Gilang here to basically speak to you guys about our company and also SRE site reliability engineering. We're very excited to be here. This is my, I guess, first time speaking to Indonesian audience. In my previous roles, I was organizing conferences. I was working in different tech companies, but I'm one of the organizers of DroidCon Singapore. So DroidCon is a worldwide known Android-focused conference, and I worked with Google here in Singapore in the last few years in organizing DroidCon. And so, I was happy to be speaking to others, and during DroidCon, I see quite a number of Indonesian who have flying into Singapore to attend the conference, and it was a very fun and good experience for me. But in terms of speaking to in a meetup here to a Indonesian audience, this is the first time, and so please hope you will give me some room. And so let me sort of introduce myself, give a quick background about what I was doing. But my role here at DKatalis is I'm the head of SRE and cloud infrastructure. And so these are the two teams that I am leading. And SRE, as you know, is called Site Reliability Engineering. And this is the team that basically takes care of what we call the production environment and making sure that our services and systems are running smoothly and reliably. And cloud infrastructure team is a team that the SRE works closely with. And this team is mostly cloud infra engineers. They are the team that takes care and provision and monitors and make sure that our cloud infra is working well and there isn't any capacity issues and things like that. So those are the two teams that I'm working with, and Gilang here is part of the SRE team, and I'll let him have a quick intro too. Gilang.
Okay. Hello everyone. Thanks for having me here. So my name is Gilang. So actually, this is my first time to speaker to this kind of talk. So I'm quite nervous and very excited. I had experience before as a backend engineer and a DevOps engineer, and like this year, Kang adopted me as his team as an SR engineer. So this is quite a new experience for me as an SRE. So yeah, I'm still looking forward to learn more about SRE and having a great um, a team with Khang and other team also. So yeah.
Thanks, Gilang. Yeah, so it's good that this is your first time. Well, hopefully there'll be a second time soon. Uh, so just quickly, I think you guys have seen the very nice video that our team has put together. But I have a slide here to sort of introduce who are we. So DKatalis is a technology company. We are well known for the digital solutions or the digital products that we are operating today in Indonesia. So our most well-known product is Jago. Hopefully, a lot of the people here would be familiar with the Jago app and actually use Jago app for your banking needs. But Jago, to people who don't know, is a digital bank, and we are a digital platform that allows you to transact banked in Indonesia. And our sign up is all through the app, and you'll be able to create accounts and share accounts, pockets that we call, with your friends, and and plan your financial journey with Jago. I won't go too much into the application, but we have a family of application that the Catalyst works on, and Aman is one of them, and as well as PX. We started the Catalyst in 2019. It was sort of where the company was formed. And in 2020, we actually grew into 3 hubs in Southeast Asia, Jakarta as the main hub, in Singapore and Pune, and these are the 2 other engineering hubs in the region. And today we are, I think more than 400 something engineers that I heard earlier in a sort of a town hall session this afternoon. But in 2021, we launched a number of apps, Aman apps, which reached 700,000 downloads. But for Jago, I can still remember we launched Jago in April 2021. So it's only slightly more than 1 year. We have grown from 0 users to now 3 million downloads for our Jago app. So we actually announced our earnings yesterday for the first half of 2022, and we are very happy that Jago is actually profitable in 2022, which is a great achievement for us as the engineering team behind Jago. So when I was thinking about what to share, and I, like any engineers, I started to build a map, mind map around our SRE journey. So in a lot of different companies and a lot of different tech companies, they are at various level of their journey in as far as like their product, their company, and even their engineering teams, the maturity of their engineering teams, as well as these are the functions within the company, such as DevOps, infrastructure, and of course SRE. So different companies have different journey at different parts of their journey. And for us, when I was thinking of sharing our journey, I put down these pointers, and I wanted to sort of prepare my talk in these 5 different areas. What was it like when we started the journey, right? What was this team like? What was the SRE sort of function within Jago when the team was like maybe 1 engineer? And then from there, building up the team, how we are organizing ourselves. And once we had a dedicated SRE team, what did we do to sort of put the team into the works and get the team to be efficient and running and supporting on the product and the users that we are seeing and growing on a month-to-month basis. So I will kind of split my talk into all these 5 different areas, and so we can start with what in the beginning, like this is like the early days where we even had the SRE engineer, right? And it was one of the vision of our chief engineering officer, Alex, and he came to me and wanted my opinion on building an SRE engineer. What's the vision behind an SRE engineer? And at that time, in reality, SRE there wasn't any SRE team. It was we started with a small team of cloud infra engineers, and slowly these engineers started picking up some of the roles and responsibilities around that we call SRE today. And so in the early days, it was a group of engineers. They all you can think of it as cloud infra engineers and also some application development team engineers. They are working on the app, and they are also working on the infra. But there was this need that we had to sort of introduce reliability, we had to introduce stability, and we had to introduce monitoring into the system so that we'll be able to serve our growing user base. And so that's our early days. There wasn't any SRE team, there wasn't any SRE engineer, and we were in our mind thinking, okay, let's build. We need to create an SRE team. Like, what is this SRE engineer? What is he gonna do? What is his roles and responsibilities? What is his experience? And so we were all sort of thinking about that, right? And obviously, I'm sure like some of you might be the Gamdaos here, sitting in your home or in the office. Hopefully not in the office because it's Friday evening. But we have a team. We have a team of cloud infra engineers, and these are engineers that are sort of writing Terraform code and implementing the infrastructure as code, provisioning the infrastructure. So we're using GCP or on using GKE and Kubernetes, and these are the cloud infra engineers that are managing our cloud infra. And certainly they have the sort of double up and play some of these SRE responsibilities, and but at the same time they're also stretching thin, right? Because they have a huge job to make sure that our infra works correctly, it's stable, there is no downtime, and so like we were thinking, can this team be SRE? Can maybe some of them be SRE? And so we started thinking, oh, it's SRE actually cloud infrastructure, right? The majority, right? And I think we concluded that no, we need this team with a very focus in the areas of SRE, right? And the whole point of creating an SRE team is so that the cloud infra team can actually focus on the infra, and so so we answered that question from there. But of course, it would be nice to have. It would be good to have an SRE engineer that has that experience, knowledge in the cloud infrastructure and Kubernetes and how Kubernetes works. These are some of the areas that we are looking for in building this team, engineers with that kind of experience. So that was a pretty easy question for us to answer. The next thing is I had been in different companies that would also think that, hey, is SRE the DevOps engineer in our company? So I would like I would actually invite Gilang to maybe explain a little bit more because he had a DevOps engineer experience, and now he's an SRE. So, Gilang.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so basically the question is SRE equal to DevOps, right? So based on my experience, so previously I was working as a DevOps for 2 years for a different company. So let's go to the definition first, or the purpose for each role, right? So the first one is what's the purpose of DevOps? So basically, DevOps teams would strive to remove bottleneck across the entire software development lifecycle by removing barrier to production and automation. So basically, DevOps purpose is how we can effect more efficiently, like deploying more on the development lifecycle. So when you type a DevOps on Google, you usually have that image like an infinite image, right? And then you have like a code and then a build release monitoring something. Yeah. So in a sense that DevOps will mainly utilizing like some CI/CD tooling to achieve that the automation, like to efficiently release a product. Okay, so so by utilizing that, so DevOps will so the uh, the goal of a DevOps is to basically to help the developer to deploy a feature or product faster. Yeah, so that's basically it. And what I saw is DevOps is like an ops with dev knowledge. Okay, and the let's go to the SRE. So SRE mainly focus on the safety, health, uptime, and the ability to remedy unforeseen problems. So what I see is sometimes we act like a firefighter. So when there's a fire or an issue on production, so we are the first responder. So basically, we will approach a team that usually responsible for the error, and then we try to work with them to identify the root cause, and then at the end, we usually have this kind of post-mortem report. So based on that report, uh, we fix the problem and then have a detailed documentation on that. So hopefully later we won't have the same issue. Okay, so SRE spend a good time so investing more to make sure that the issue is not occurring on the production. Um, so by removing some of the complex burden, like maintaining the uptime of distributed system, so SRE allows the development team to focus on the feature to the feature development, and let the SRE maintain the service level commitments. Okay, so by that, so it's quite the answer is not like quite straightforward. Is it yes or no? So as an SRE, we also have like some overlapping skill that it's good to have as an SRE from DevOps engineer. The first one is to be an excellent at sysadmin. So basically, as I said earlier, I view DevOps as an ops with dev knowledge. So basically, you are expected to have some basic knowledge about the operating system, especially Linux. In our case, so that's good to have. And the second one is the deploy virtualization. Probably it's more on the knowledge of a deploy platform. So it's not limited to virtualization. Sometimes it's like container Kubernetes and something like that. So it's good to have as an SRE to have what knowledge about the platform that we are deploying our application to. And the third one is the experience with network and storage. So I think this is a good to have, but not really. I mean, like strictly required for an SRE. The next one is the knowledge of code. Um, so yeah, as so if SRE is an ops with the dev knowledge, I think SRE is the opposite, right? It's a dev with the ops knowledge. So as an SRE, it's good. I mean, it's excellent if you have like knowledge on a code. So basically, when there's an issue, right, with the our production code, and then so we will working hand in hand with the developer, right, to identify the root cause, and then probably will provide some long-term solution. Um, yeah, and the next one is the soft skill. So one thing that I want to highlight. So both SRE and DevOps is like is a bridge between operation and development. So it's quite critical to have some good communication skill. For example, if we have some serverly issue on production, right? So we want to try the issue to the like basically different team. So we want to like the first like to open the conversation and ask the right question, and yeah, basically like moderating the whole remediation. And the next is the understanding of the automation. So yeah, DevOps usually have this skill like basically uh, they required it to build some automation. So I think it's good to have for SRE to have this kind of knowledge. And the next thing is the knowledge of testing. So yeah, so testing basically DevOps will try to automate everything, like they can automate, right? So for testing, they want to like integrate the test to the whole cycle of development, right? So yeah, get have a knowledge of the testing is quite critical, because how can we expect a system to work reliably without good testing culture, right, in the organization. And the next thing is the security aspect. So so this one it might for some organization they don't have like dedicated security team, so they called it DevSecOps. So because in some organization, also in DKatalis, they we have like security. So it depends on the organization. So for personally for me, it's not really necessary, but good to have. You have the security knowledge. Um, yeah, I think that's what my personal opinion about this SRE slash DevOps.
Cool. Thanks, Gilang. Yeah, so we had so in our team we had a few engineers. They're part of the product development team, and they also had some previous experience of DevOps, and so these engineers were actually playing some of these DevOps engineers role within our company, within our teams. And there was no dedicated DevOps engineer that is taking care of the DevOps area, and I think that is rightly so, because I think in today's landscape, you can see and hear companies promoting DevOps as a culture rather than as a role, right? So the culture itself, it just means that everyone within the engineering organizations, the engineers within the company should learn and adopt and have a DevOps mentality, which they start picking up these different skills that are part of the DevOps engineers toolkit, right? So to answer this, when we were trying to build our SRE team, is that does it mean we want to hire DevOps engineer or engineers with DevOps background experience to be SRE? Sure, I think given this list, I think the DevOps engineer that definitely has a good amount of areas and experience and skills that we are looking for our SRE team, and so indeed when we were hiring, we were looking for some of these engineers that were DevOps engineers in their previous companies, and we are also thinking that with this background, it will give them a good start as a SRE engineer, even though they had not been playing a SRE engineer or wasn't in the SRE engineer role previously. So with that, I think we sort of came together and concluded that we're not looking for a specific engineers. We're looking for an engineer with a set of skills, experiences, and ability to learn and problem solve. And these are some of the areas that, as an engineer, you'll be expected to have, right? And so for us, when we were hiring this team, we were thinking about, can a software engineer actually play this role? And the answer is yes, because as a SRE, you are expected to have a closer knowledge of the code, just like what Gilang was explaining earlier, which I also, truly agree that, you having a good, even that if you have a few years of developer experience, working on code, working on microservices, it gives you that fundamental, that experience that you will need as you transition and start in this SRE role. So that's a very good background, and we actually are hiring SRE engineer and had hired SRE engineer who were developer background and with no sysadmin, for example, or with no cloud infra experience. Because we ultimately believe that these things can be learned by the engineer themselves. And also what we're hiring for are engineers who are passionate and interested to learn and, have these sets of experience and skill sets. So it's quite interesting. But it was also confusing at the same time. And so for us, we started looking at some of the, popular materials out there. I'm sure if you have been looking into site reliability engineering, you would have came across this SRE handbook. This was sort of taken as the guidebook for SRE for the industry because, it's written by Google, published by O'Reilly, and the engineers that were writing this book, they all work for Google. Google was the one who came up with the SRE practice, right? And so, but after looking at this, we were also thinking that, wow, these, what had been written in the SRE handbook looks really good, but is it applicable to us today? And the answer was no, because we weren't really at Google scale and in terms of operations or the users or even the systems or the complexity of the systems. And also our teams were not as mature or large as Google engineering organizations. And so even though the SRE handbook was great, it gave us a lot of ideas. We felt that, or I felt that we couldn't apply this directly, and so based on all these different, looking at the teams that we, the engineers and the teams that we have, looking at the DevOps culture, looking at the SRE handbook, I think we wanted to set a goal, right, for this team, and what that goal is basically we want to continuously improve the reliability of our systems, and these systems are the fundamental of our digital product platforms, and so that is a very, if you look at various SRE teams at different companies, that's definitely one of their goals, is to continuously improve. That's the team around, so you worked in a iterative way, and it's always, making things better, and you focus on reliability of the system. And from this goal, you can see that there are a number of things that are very engineering focused. One is your reliability, right? The second is systems, which means you need to master reliability. You need to be able to know what's happening with the system. You need to have that technical ability to even, let's say, look at the code and understand what is happening. What is this piece of code doing? And you'll be working hand in hand with the developer and when there is an incident. And so that was the goal that we defined for ourselves, like as a SRE team. And based on this goal, we talked to all the different stakeholders, like, why do we have SRE at Catalyst role, like, and we started to get more ideas and more inputs from different teams, and they were helping us to provide the answer to, what do you think our vision of for our SRE team is, and how can SRE actually contribute effectively and work with your team. And those were very good questions that help us to form our early vision and our early ideas around, okay, what this group of engineers are and what are their roles and responsibilities. And with that, with all that, it came, eventually we came to a conclusion that we need to organize ourselves as a team, right? Just like any other team, you would like to organize yourselves as front-end engineer, back-end engineer, or maybe full-stack engineer today. But for SRE, we, after talking to a number of team stakeholders and also, brainstorming ourselves and learning from the SRE handbook, we realized these are the three areas. These are the three areas that we would need to focus on. This is based on where we are as a company, where we are as a product. And so these three areas are production, support, and operations. What does that mean? It means we have our product product running in production, and we have new users joining our Jago Jago app, and we would like to provide these users a good experience. And these features are released into production, and these users are mainly interfacing and using your system, your services in production, and your production environments require support, and your production environment needs to have operations around that. It not only means that it's infra operations. There are many other types of operations happening that in production for your app and for your features. And so that was one of the most crucial area that, after talking to stakeholders, after, all through different feedbacks, that we decided, hey, this is one area we would need to focus on. Release management and engineering was the second one. This was quite a big area, but if you think about production, support, and operations in comparison, right, release management it's slightly smaller, not so daunting, but it's still quite a big chunk of focus area for us. And so when you look at release management and engineering, what do we team? What does SRE play? What is the role of SRE engineers in this process, in this area of our activities? And so that was the second piece or second focus area that we think was very important. And the third one is monitoring and observability, right? So monitoring is quite explanatory. So what we want to do is we're going to focus on having to monitor what's happening in the production environment, right? Whether there is any failures or errors, we need some kind of tool to allow us to monitor the system. And besides that, we need observability. And observability is just a very generic word in terms of knowing what is happening in your system. Similarly, like monitoring, and so these are very similar areas, but with different types of tools that you'll use, or these tools you use together to achieve what you want in this area. So given these three different areas, and we try to think about, okay, we are hiring this SRE engineer, what kind of skill sets that does this SRE engineer need? But let's not go into that first. So we started with a quite small SRE team. Once we know that these are the three focus areas that this team will work on, we started to ask around in the engineering teams who would be interested in exploring SRE as a new role, and we managed to put together a very small team initially, 3 engineers and myself, and we call ourselves the SRE team. And so just to give you an idea in terms of how the other teams, the product teams, were organized, so we have different clans. Each clans there are a number of squads, and within the clan they work on a specific area in the business area in our system or our digital platform. And so when we started, it was one SRE team managing all these different clans, and so we were struggling. We were trying to understand what each clan is doing and what are the services that each of these clans they own, right? And how are they operating these services? How are they monitoring these services? And how can we help them in monitoring these services? And so based on those 3 areas, we were sort of working and collaborating with all these different clans in those 3 areas. But working in DKatalis has a very interesting experience, because so far the things that we've worked on keep adding people, the teams that keep getting larger, and we keep seeing more clans being formed to tackle one specific business area, and so that was within 3 months we had our teams grew, and the clans were reformed, restructured, reorganized into different clans. Then more squads was introduced to some clans, and some clans stayed the same. But we realized that we had to be able to organize ourselves so that we can actually manage that dynamics, because in the next 6 months or 12 months, the product teams will potentially again grow, and the product teams also can potentially change. And so we were also had started hiring other engineers, other SRE engineers, and we were able to grow our team from 4 to more than 4. And so we started to put some of these SRE engineers and assign them to be working with a specific clan. And so that allows each of the engineer within SRE to build a deeper knowledge of what that clan is working on, what are the services that they are working on, and each of these SRE engineer would focus on that activities or the areas that the product clan is focusing on. And so it gives them a smaller scope for them to go deeper into, which works out pretty well for us now. And so that was how we had to adapt and change, and again continuously understand our business needs and grow with the teams. So I've talked about how the teams were formed, and the next thing is definitely when the SRE team, when we started forming the SRE team, there was some existing processes, but these processes were not owned by a single team. And so the first task, or the first thing that we had to do was to, in the three different areas, is to start defining some of these SRE processes. And so just to give you some examples in production support and operations, what does that mean in terms of creating or updating processes? Let's take incident management for as an example. This was one of the most crucial process that we had to create, because before the SRE team, whenever there is an incident, it goes directly to the engineering team, the product development teams. And so we, as the SRE team now, would be the first responder. We would be the team that would be the ones that will have to understand first what is the problem, what is that incident, who are the teams that we should involve with when the incident is raised, what's the severity of the incident, and also how do we escalate the incident to relevant stakeholders and teams. And so that was the very first process that we looked at, and that was one of the most important process in terms of production support, right? And so incident management is, again, a continuous process for us. We looked at how we handle incidents today, how we are defining severity, and do we need to change our severity metrics. So all that is, again, part of the iterative improvement on our process. So we have a SRE team, then we need to have an on-call rotation. It's because whenever there is an incident, we are the first team that would respond and would triage and potentially find as much information before the incident is being escalated to the product engineering teams. And so putting together that on-call rotation, what does an on-call engineer do, the role of an on-call SRE, and eventually we settle on having a primary and a secondary on-call, and what is the role of the primary and secondary on-call. And when you're on call, what do you do? And these are all processes that we created, and we discuss, and we agree as a team that these are going to be the processes put in place, and how we would be working with other teams in this area. So release management and engineering is the next big focus areas for us. So what that means is that we start to define refine our release process. When we started the SRE team, there was no one looking into or focusing specifically into the release process. How should we improve our release process? And that is one of the important areas that maybe some of you wouldn't have think about, that this is actually something that SRE cares about. Because think about it, if your software is in the production environment, is the one that your customer is primarily interfacing with, it's important to control and have a good understanding of the software that is being released into your production environment. And so that goes hand in hand with the deployment process. How do we deploy a new version of a software into production? How do we version our software? And how do we roll back during deployment? So these are all very important areas within release management and engineering, and it's part of what the SRE role that we have defined for ourselves. And so using this as an example, you can see that in different companies, when they form their SRE team, just depending on how mature their SRE function or their team is, they will be focusing on different things. And it also depends on how old is your company? How old is your product? How long have your teams been working on this? How complex is your system? And so for us, these are the areas that we have identified that they are very crucial for us and for the SRE to focus on. Similarly, with the SRE engineer that is there, what is the role of the SRE in the deployment process? What's the role of the SRE engineer in the deployment process? It means that now for each deployment, there would be an SRE engineer on call. So if there is an issue that the development team face during deployment, there is someone that would jump in, that would come in and help to organize the effort to recover the system, so that the failed deployment would not impact the users too much. And so now, if you think about it, we're sort of putting all these different roles into this engineer and have this engineer to be focused in this area and to make sure that this area is continuously improved. By continuously improving the release process, the development process, your deployment process, all this helps in creating a better, reliable system, and so that we don't have any incident or any issues, and our customers and our users can use our application without any problems at all. And so the third area that we thought was as important is monitoring and observability. And these are some of the questions in the process that we were forming around. What needs to monitor? What needs to be monitored? What is the process behind making sure that these services are monitored? What kind of alerts would be triggered if there is an issue? Should we use claim-based or service-based monitoring? Which means if we are building observability dashboards, should the dashboards be service-based or claim-based? And so these are some of the questions and process that we put in place. And then, of course, if you have started looking into SRE, you will be kind of, you will see these terms SLOs, SLIs, SLAs in the mix, in regularly being promoted as metrics that the SRE team should use and employ in order to improve the reliability of your system. And so, how do we measure? How do we measure SLOs? How do we define SLIs? What are the SLIs? What are the SLOs? How do we measure them? And ultimately, these contributing to your SLAs. And when we started the SRE team, it was not that easy to be able to define the SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs because things were changing very rapidly, right? Every 2 weeks we would release a major release into our production, which includes a lot of changes from different services, and these changes sometimes could impact the, say, for example, your service level objectives. And so it's hard to enforce the SLO and SLIs and SLAs. And so we have to sort of use a different process and approach in enforcing this. So some of the dashboards that I'll show you later on would give you a sense of how we're employing this in our SRE practice and process. So once we had our process in place and we started looking at how do we build up a library of tools, just like any engineering team, like you need tools, right? If you're a development, if you're part of the development teams, you would need to have your VS Code or whatever the IDE that you need to write your code. And for SRE engineers, we too need to build out our library of tools. And these tools are, when we think about these tools, we use the three main focus areas and try to determine what are the tools that would help us and that we need to improve these different areas. So for production support and operations, if you are not aware, documentations is a very good tool. Regardless of whether you are an engineer, like writing code. Similarly, it's a very important tool for SRE as well. Also, what kind of documentations we need. This includes the things that we talked about earlier, the processes that we're putting in place. We need to have proper documentations for them. Besides the processes, one of the important things and important documentations would be your run books. Consider run books as sort of guidebooks that would for any SRE engineer that can take the run book and follow the instructions. And these run books would be used to help triage or determine what is the root cause of some of the issues or errors that we are seeing in production. And so documentations as tools, this is a huge part, and this is again a continuous process for us to improve our documentations, create the run book, organize them, make them as easy to be understand and understood by anyone who's reading it for the first time and performing the steps. Second thing is training, right? Training is often an area or not regarded as a tool that some teams would think is a tool, but to us, similarly, as a development engineer, you would need to be trained. You need to be trained in the new kind of frameworks that you're using. You need to be trained how to write tests. You need to be trained how to write clean code. And similarly, for production support and operations, we wanted to make sure that our SRE engineers are trained. There is proper training, and they go through training very often and regularly, so that they are familiar with the production activities, the production support operations, and as well as handling incidents, right? And so these are trainings that are very important for us, and these are the initial set of tools that we started building up as a team, because there was no such library of tools. Right, there were maybe some documentations that were written up by some of the engineers, and then some. And about training, we had to conduct our own training. We had to create our own training materials. And as new engineer joins, new SRE engineer join, we put them through an onboarding process that includes that training. PagerDuty is a tool that we already have in when we start forming the team, but it was not very organized. We had to organize PagerDuty so that it actually works for us. And as well as Jira, where we, like any other engineering team, would use Jira to create a story for ourselves. And we worked off like any other engineering teams. We use Sprint, Scrum. So we have Sprint, and we have our kickoff and our planning, and we have our sprint grooming, and we have all these different Scrum related activities, but we're not as strict, in my opinion, as the engineering teams. Like, we don't have any demo sessions, for example. And so even though we are using a lot of the Scrum methodology, we're using what applies and what helps us as a team to work closely with the engineering team. And so eventually PagerDuty became, we took over ownership of PagerDuty because this is an important tool for us. We want to make sure that any alerts or any configuration in PagerDuty is would need to be evaluated by us to make sure that it is set at the right level, right? Ultimately, all the alerts is going to go to SRE, and so we want to make sure PagerDuty works very well for us. So dry runs is something that we thought would be a really useful tool. We haven't had any dry runs today, but I think we are looking at putting together how we can use dry runs to help us to be familiar with any production incident. And we also introduced what we call the SRE incident review. So this is a meeting where we invite the engineering teams and various stakeholders, and we would be reviewing the incident that happened previously, perhaps a few weeks ago. Once when this incident already has gone through the postmortem, and we have a detailed root cause analysis, we have follow-on action items, we have determined the impact of some of these incidents that is creating, and together as a larger team, as a company, we talk about these incidents and we try to learn and understand what happened and how are we the improvements that we are making, and how would we prevent a second incident from happening. And so these are some of the tools that we felt was really helpful, and that we had to start building up this library of tools in production, support, and operations. So the next would be building up tools for our release management and engineering. We had already started using GitLab CI as our main CI and CD tool. We also wanted to introduce quality gates and also regression dashboards that will give us a quick overview and in terms of what the regression cycle is, what are the issues found during regression, and all that is being shown on the dashboard. And so we can understand for the release coming up for this new version of the software that we're releasing into production, what's the quality of that regression of that new release. And the quality gates are, things that like sonar cube scans and, code smells and things like that can be done as using some of these tools to implement quality gates in our pipelines. And the third really important one was performance testing. This was a crucial tool for us. We had started very early, the engineering teams, and we had a team called performance testing team, 2 engineers that were working on performance testing, and they are now part of SRE, and we will continue to build this area and improve this as a tool for us. What does performance testing tool do? Basically, if you think about it, it's a load test. We're running some sort of load tests when we're running the performance test. But in addition to running load tests, we're also simulating user activities based on some of the journeys that our application has. So with a combination of load and journey-based performance tests, this whole set of test suites allows us to know any performance issue of the new version of software that we're going to be released into production. And so these are some of the tools that we have determined that is important for us to be able to have a strong understanding and management of release and engineering. And so that gives you an idea of what kind of tools we were building up. For observability and monitoring, we started to have some of these tools very early on. However, these tools were not owned by a team, and so there was this issue where we were not utilizing the full capacity and the capability of the tool. So with the SRE team in place, we own the tools in the monitoring and observability area. So that includes Dynatrace. And so we are the team that would own Dynatrace, how we use Dynatrace, what kind of features of Dynatrace do we want to use. And so we're using, just like every other, sort of APM tool that of New Relic or, the Datadog or Splunk. And this gives us the observability into our infrastructure or our GKE, our Kubernetes containers in production. Besides that, Dynatrace also had a lot of different features, and it needs a team to work on enabling these features and integrating these features into your application. So for example, we're using Dynatrace mobile experience suite, which means we in our Jago application, we have Dynatrace integrated in the Jago application. You'll be able to see what is happening in the Jago application on the front end. And so this gives us a lot of data and monitoring and what is happening on the front end, which is closer to the user versus on the back end. So now today we have what we call the mobile experience monitoring, and also the microservices monitoring on our backend system, all through Dynatrace. And we are going to continue exploring the features of Dynatrace that allows us to give more observability into what's happening in production. Similarly, we also adopted GCP monitoring, which is what was called Stack Driver previously. And so we have log monitoring, log metrics. We're using these as additional tool for observability. And the other set of tools that are really helpful for us is to have synthetic tests. Synthetic tests just means you have a set of tests that would as if behave as users that are interacting with your services. And so these synthetic tests are running and integrated with our production environment and performing certain journeys in our production environment and collecting the response time, the response that the services are returning, any errors experienced during that journey. So all that is being collected as metrics and being displayed and observed in Dynatrace. And the next set of tools is the service-based metrics. So what that means is we started to explore how to build new services. These services would include monitoring of business metric or service-based metric in those services. And for example, transaction is a huge feature of our system, of our application. So people need to transfer from one account to another account within Jago, or maybe from Jago to an external bank. These are transactions happening in our system, and we need to have a way to measure these transaction-related metrics. And so these are what we call as service-based metrics. If it's transactions, then it's transaction-related metrics. If it's user registration, then it will be registration-based metrics. And these metrics is something that would become a tool for us to know what is happening with our system, whether there's a new release or there's no new release, or maybe there's a upgrade of our infrastructure, potentially could then impact some of these service-based metrics. And so our journey of building up these tools is pretty long. We spent about 6 months initially forming up the team, creating the process, and then start adopting and acquiring some of these tools. So that was very helpful for us in terms of getting a good view to where we are today. And so just to give you a glimpse of some of these dashboard, Gilang can help share some what the details on these dashboards.
Okay, so this is the overall dashboard for overall system. So basically, here you will get some basic question like how the service perform, like how the load, how the memory usage, like is there any problem within the system currently, how many pods running, etc., etc. So basically this will give us overall status of the system. And then the next one is, this is our SLO for third parties. So on this page we can see that what's the current current performance or objective for our other party. So based on this data, so we could like ask them if the service falls below the expected SLR, the one that we agree previously. So based on this data, for example, if there's some, for example, there's some yellow monthly SLO for Dukcapil, right? So based on this data, so we can talk to the Dukcapil team. So here the availability is fall below our agreement, so they can work on that. So yeah, so this is kind of like a contract between us and the third party. um, okay, so for this next one is from the synthetic test. So basically synthetic test is the way that we test some of our journeys. So basically for this example, we have transactor journey. So we are still adding more in terms of synthetic test. So this is quite important for us to have like this kind of test, because this way we can know the error and the kemungkinan apa kejadinya error sebelum tahu apa sebelum dialami oleh user. So yeah, this is quite important. So we are still exploring more about this, and we also adding more dashboard, especially the one that Kang mentioned about the service based metrics. So yeah, back to you, Kang.
Yeah. So so part of the thing that that was, I keep repeating that the SRE is a continuous improvement. And so once we had all this in place, and what if I told you that our work is not done yet? we were just sort of setting the stage. And it's very true, right? Once you have all these set up, then you would need to think about and sort of define and redefine what matters, and all that comes to metrics and metrics and metrics. There's a very interesting state of SRE report that was published by Dynatrace, and basically in the report it shows the 32% of the companies that they had survey or talked to were at the emerging state, right? And if you look at this, we had immature, where there was no SRE implemented formally, which was what we were starting, right? And now we was sort of in the emerging phase, where we have start establishing SRE practice within the last 2 years, and now it's in the beginning stage. And 42% of the companies are in the maturing state, where they have a SRE in place that are more than 2 years. And what's considered advanced is when you have a SRE practice in place that is more than 5 years. And so you can imagine that when you start to create your SRE team, you'll be going through this cycle. And so you need to know as you grow as a team, what are the metrics that matters. And so one of the things that I came across was from a Google talk, is about the life cycle of an incident. So before an incident, a user is very happy using your app, using the Jago app, performing all sort of transactions, and then your outage begins, and slowly that user happiness or that user experience starts to die, because something is not working. And then your alerts are being fired and acknowledged, and the SRE team comes to triage the problem. And once the issue is mitigated, then the system starts to recover, and the users can start performing and using your services properly, and then they become more happy until the next time there's another outage. And so these different different phases of your incident has become very important metrics for the SRE team to measure. And I'm sure a lot of you guys who are looking into SRE practices would have came across these terms like time to detect, time to mitigate, time between failures. So these are some of the metrics that we measure today, and we define how to measure them. And once you have these metrics, then you would try to see which area is more important for you to focus on. Do you want to focus on improving time to detect, or do you want to focus on improving time to mitigate? And there are different techniques that allows you to improve these different areas, or for you to explore how you can improve these different areas. And you can see some of these tools are some of the things that we have put in place, like training, playbooks, dashboards, your observability and your logging. So all these helps you. It can only be useful if you really know how to measure what the metrics are. So defining your metrics. And over time, you need to sort of think about which area is more important for you to focus on. And from the state of the SRE report, a lot of the companies, they are, continuously to work on reducing MTTR, mean time to recover. They are also building and maintaining automation code, influencing architecture design decisions. So working closely with the engineering team to make sure that the architecture that they are working on, they're introducing, has reliability and scale. And these are some of the sort of activities that are emerging from the SRE reports. What can be seen today is that there's a shift from SRE to SRE-driven engineering. More than 51% of the SRE are dedicating a significant of time into influencing the architecture design decisions to improve reliability. What does that mean for us? Like today, the SRE engineers are having a constant, regular conversation with the application teams, with the product development teams. If this current tool, or if we're using Kafka, how can we make Kafka better? If they are introducing a new tool or a new architecture, we are talking to them. We are participating in the RFCs. We are in the architecture conversations in terms of how the new service to be built, what kind of new languages are they using. And this is what we call SRE-driven engineering, to bring that reliability focus as part of the engineering activities. And so this pictures kind of show that SRE is really sort of a glue between dev and ops, and and actually I want to say a lot more teams in the company. We work and strive to make sure that as a team we all are able to introduce reliability and keeps improving the reliability of the system. All right, that is all I have for today. Thank you everyone for the time, and if there's time, I'd like to have some questions as well.
Okay, actually, that's very interesting discussion. And for me, personally, I learned a lot about the history on the SRE. Maybe we should include that on the onboarding, kan. And yeah, so for untuk teman-teman, kalau mau ada pertanyaan, silahkan ditanyakan. Kalau misal pakai bahasa Indonesia aja nggak apa-apa, nanti bisa aku bantu translatein. Okay, so there's one question. Does responsibility for reporting the incident is only at the SRE?
So should I take that, Gilang? So
Does the responsibility?
Yeah. So the responsibility
Sorry?
is. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So let me answer this question. So it's definitely not only the SRE is the only one that can report any incident. In fact, today we have different incident reporting channels that allows the employee of the company to report an incident. Um, and also there is past incidents that were reported by our customers. So that was the earlier days where we started setting up the SRE function, and so one of our goals is that we do not want our customers to report issues to us. We want to know that the issues exist, the problem exists before our customer. And so definitely incidents can be raised by customer, by employees, by internal channel, or even by SRE as we observe something is happening on our dashboard.
Okay, so there's another question from Pravita Sari Anjani. She says she's still unsure what's the difference between SRE and DevOps. Maybe you can share light a bit on that one.
Gilang, you want to take that because you were explaining that?
Okay. So yeah, for my limited experience, in my my previous job on the DevOps set, we mainly focus on automating stuff. Basically anything that we can automate, we automate that. So and so the goal is to have like the whole cycle of development faster and more efficient, and hopefully at the end we could have we could deliver more feature with uh, more feature like the frequency higher, and hopefully also more robust system with all the integration with testing, and for SRE, I think it's more on the whole like how can we make our system more scalable and reliable, right? On here, what I experience is we are like the first one to respond if there's some issue on the production, and then um, we and we working with the application team like to uh, work to debug and to troubleshoot the issue, and then um, like at the end, based on that sorry dari apa namanya insiden itu, nanti kita bakal belajar apa yang salah, apa yang perlu dibenahi, dan nanti proses itu akan berulang terus. Jadi nanti itu jadi sebuah culture gitu, dan hopefully sih bakal diimplement sama semua tim. Mungkin sorry kalau apa jawabannya agak muter-muter. Maybe Kang, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, I think Gilang was giving a good sort of explanation, so I can maybe add something from my own perspective, right? Uh, I definitely agree on Gilang that the focus of the SRE is really on the reliability and continuously improving that reliability. Now, if you look at DevOps in our organization, DevOps is not a team. We're trying to promote DevOps as a culture where every engineer should start to be capable and have experience and knowledge on how to troubleshoot a failed pipeline, right? Or to implement the pipeline that he needs to be able to deploy the services into, let's say, the non-prod environment, uh, and for sure into production environment would be taken care by SRE team, and we are providing the tools for them to do that easily, right? So for example, now we are looking at harness as a tool for building pipelines, and this tool will be easily easily allow the engineers to implement pipelines themselves. So DevOps as a culture rather than as a role and responsibility, and it's a role and responsibility of everyone in engineering. So to me, that's I think the main difference, right? However, it doesn't mean that if you're a DevOps engineer, you're not able to try out for SRE engineer. It also means that you, as Gilang was explaining, you do have the relevant experience and skill sets that we are looking for, or an SRE engineer should have. But more importantly is that you're not just refined to those DevOps area, and now the areas that you will be or you'll need to learn and get comfortable with is much larger. It includes knowing more of the systems and how the system works. It includes knowing how to measure and monitor the systems. It includes how you would talk to an engineer about a certain architecture that they're implementing, or perhaps even a change in that release that is causing problem, and you're sitting there looking at that change with the engineer and trying to figure out what potentially could be causing that problem. So it's a lot more areas compared to DevOps, but certainly it's to me, I think it is a lot more exciting as well, because you're touching in a lot of different important areas of the system.
Okay, sorry, I want to like summarize the answer in bahasa. Jadi singkatnya perbedaan antara DevOps dan SRE itu kalau di DKatalis, DevOps itu lebih ke culture-nya. Jadi bukan sebuah role. Jadi untuk culture, untuk gimana kita pakai pipelines, gimana kita automate dan lain-lain. Terus juga Kang tadi juga mention antara DevOps dan SRE itu banyak skill yang relevan antara DevOps dan SRE, dan di SRE ini lebih banyak scope atau aspek lain yang bisa dieksplor, seperti itu sih. Okay, so Kang, this is another question from Tini Pane. So she's asking ngobrol. Okay, so regarding SRE, so there's SRE and a project engineer. So there's like a different role, right? So to improve the reliability, sometimes the problem comes from the service from the product itself. So is it like also responsibility of SRE team, Kang? Or is it the responsibility from the engineering team?
Yeah, I think that's a good question too. Like, whose responsibility is this to make sure that the reliability of the services is there, right? Um, it's both. Both application or the product development teams has to ensure that they are delivering good quality code, right? Which is why they are writing tests. This test will make sure that the code works with less bugs, right? It wouldn't be without bugs. And what SRE focus on is from a different perspective, right? So now with your code written, there's test written, then it's being deployed and it runs in production environment under load and under different usage by customers and different use cases and maybe even corner cases, things that were not expected or caught by tests. And what SRE is doing is that we use tools to know that this is happening, right? So we are monitoring what is happening in the production by either looking at the error rates or looking at some of the errors that are happening or looking at the response time and we gather this data and we take them and we talk to the application teams or the product development teams and say, hey, we are looking at the response time for this API is taking more than 1 second, is a lot higher than what it used to be. What is happening here? And so the application team will try to figure out, and we'll be having a discussion about what could be the potential problems, and even so. So once we identify these kind of issues that are related to the reliability of their services, it is the application or the development team's responsibility to improve that, and they have to own that. And so SRE wouldn't be fixing those issues for them, but we will be working and we will be trying to understand what is causing that. And so that is how SRE would work together with the teams in improving the reliability.
Oke, apakah ada pertanyaan lain? Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions. So I guess that's all from us. So I'll get this stage to the moderator.
Okay, very well done. I mean, the discussion is really hot. It's really, really cool, interesting topics, in my opinions, about SRE. Because personally, I just ordinary software engineer, so I don't really know. But I just know like there are a lot of stuff happening in the SRE team as well. So yeah, I guess thank you very much, Kang and Mas Gilang, as your time to be our speakers in the next sessions. And yeah, I guess that's it. Maybe we can see you on the next event, I guess. Okay, if anyone also want to join our Telegram groups, where I think we can invite Mas Gilang and Kang to join our Telegram groups after this. So maybe if later on there are other people that want to ask about SRE in general, you can practically answer in the Telegram groups over the links in below. I guess that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you teman-teman GDG.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you Kang and Mas Gilang.
Oke, jadi ya Mbak Zaza, mungkin kita udah jam segini juga. I mean, thank you teman-teman yang masih stay sampai jam sekarang di acara kita malam kali ini. Mungkin jika ada saran atau requestan topik untuk kerjasama kita selanjutnya, mau bahas apa, mungkin bisa langsung tulis di kolom komentarnya Google, YouTube juga. Dan nanti ketika ada event selanjutnya juga bisa tetap pantengin di GDG Community Dev page-nya Google GDG Cloud Jakarta. Dan terima kasih juga kepada pihak DKatalis yang udah nge-held event malam kali ini bersama dengan kita. I guess that's it, Mbak. Ada last word sebelum kita tutup?
Mau bilang thank you banget ke teman-teman GDG Cloud Jakarta udah nyempetin waktunya dan juga mau kolaborasi sama DKatalis. Semoga kalau misalnya ada kesempatan lagi di kedepannya kita bisa kolaborasi bareng lagi dan bisa bikin teman-teman lebih excited lagi sama topik-topik yang baru ya.
Oke, bagus. Tapi malam ini topiknya keren banget sih tentang SRI. Jadi ya sekian mungkin dari GDG Cloud Jakarta dan DKatalis pada malam hari ini. Terima kasih semuanya yang udah stay tune. Bye-bye.